So I'll offer my obeisances to Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. Namam Vishnu Vadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Iti Namine Vivarshavahanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha. Madhurajwala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murte Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddhapa Siddhanta Dhvanta Harine. So this is a beautiful glorification of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, and it clearly states Apasiddhanta Dhvanta Harine. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur is known for. One of the disciples, they asked Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, actually not Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, one of the disciples, they were asking another disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, can you describe him in a word? And that disciple said, well, if you want one word for him, that's devastation and destruction. Apasiddhanta Dhvanta Harine. That if we don't speak anything about Bhaktisiddhanta, and if we simply state this one word, Apasiddhanta Dhvanta Harine, you have clearly nailed and pointed out who is Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. Now, what did he destroy? He was a spiritual person. A spiritual person is expected to, not to destroy, but to construct. A Western civilization, they always think spirituality means love, and spirituality means harmony, spirituality means unification, oneness of consciousness. But here is a saintly person, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, who believes in destroying and crushing and devastating the wrong concepts and deviations. What did he destroy? What did he want to? What he wanted to destroy? He wanted to destroy Sahajism. By Sahajism, I mean at that time when Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur was present in Calcutta. He was born in. He appeared. We don't say born. He appeared in 1874, and he disappeared. Today is Disappearance Day. In 1936, all right, on 31st December. So he appeared for a cause, and when he appeared in Calcutta, in Navadip, at his time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement was known as a sentimental movement. All the scholarly people and erudite people, aristocratic people, they considered Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement as a degraded, let me put it, as a degraded spiritual, sexual movement like that. It was like that. There were so many deviations, Aula, Baula, Karat Bhajan, Gaurang Nagari, and it was all mixed with tantrism, tantric practices, sexual practices, and all sentimentalism. It was a bad mix, by the way. It was like hippie movement. If you 1960s, 70s, 1960s and 1970s, America witnessed hippie movement. They were all into spirituality, but that kind of spirituality was all into their hallucinatory word and drugs and like that. That was the thing what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement was when Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur was there in India. So he, with one step, he crushed Sahajism. He destroyed Sahajism by his scholarly lectures. In fact, by using his scholarly language. If you see his writings, his commentaries, and also his speeches, most of them were speeches which were recorded by his secretaries. Sundarana Vidya and others, and they were published in magazines which he used to publish. He used to publish quarterly, sometimes weekly. He wanted to publish magazine daily, by the way. His magazines were Gaudiya. He at least 4 magazines he was publishing, and in Hindi, like Bhagavad magazine, in Bengali Gaudiya, and Sajjan Toshini also in Bengali, in Odisha Paramarthi magazine. And his language which is recorded there is very terse, long sentences, long words, almost Sanskritized Bengali, and he was doing it for a purpose, so that erudite and scholarly people, they see Gaudiya Vaishnava movement of Lord Chaitanya, not as a sentimental, foolish movement, but a philosophy which is of very high order, a philosophy which is unification of all 4 sampradayas of Vaishnavism. And it happened like that because of his scholarliness and his language, which was very scholarly and difficult to understand for a layman. It made its impact. Gaudiya Vaishnavism at his time, it came to be known among scholarly circles, and it was, and people started distinguishing Sahajism from Gaudiya Vaishnavism. People started noting Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's contribution as a philosopher, and Bhaktisiddhanta created this whole different kind of ethos for Mahaprabhu's movement in his Gaudiya mission, in his Gaudiya Math, what he started, Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. So he was using this complicated language on purpose. He could have used simple language. He could have very easily done that. But he was doing it on purpose, and it made its impact. Most of his disciples were very scholarly, highly educated. Like for example, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Maharaj, he was from Brahman family, very educated. Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, he was also educated, like this Bhakti Pradeep Tirth Maharaj and others. They were educated, and at that time mostly educated people were joining Brahmo Samaj, and also Ramakrishna Mission, which were considered to be intellectual movements, but people were joining Bhaktisiddhanta. So merely by using his language, he destroyed Sahajism and created a whole different kind of ethos for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, separate from Sahajism. And then his concepts, every one of his statement which I have read, and every one of his article is completely directed towards destroying Sahajism. All his teachings were directed towards destroying Sahajism. For him, if anybody was chanting 64 rounds, for him they were simply counting beats, or to the least they were making some noise. That's what he said. So once he was giving a discourse somewhere, and a devotee who was sitting besides him, he was chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And that his chanting was audible to Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur when he was giving a lecture. And Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, he overheard his chanting, and he said, "Stop making noise." For him, it's not Krishna Nam. He said, it's not Krishna Nam, it's simply a noise. His conceptions were revolutionary. Who would have said at his time that chanting of Hare Krishna is a noise? Nobody. But he said it's noise. He said to one of his disciples, don't just count beats. He was chanting 64 rounds daily. He said, don't count beats. Serve Krishna. In his eyes, Kirtan was not just singing and chanting, what Sahajiyas were doing, by the way. So for him, Kirtan was not a dictionary meaning. It's not that he opens a dictionary, okay, this is Kirtan, and the meaning is singing, loudly singing the glories of the Lord. No. He said, I have not come to give you dictionary meanings. If you read his works and lectures, most of his, the way he defines the words, it is not from dictionary. For him, Kirtanam is a war. It's not simply singing loudly. He often used to say, don't produce some voice from a vocal box. It will not please Krishna. He said Kirtanam is a war, external and internal. External war with all these deviations, misconceptions, wrong ideas, illusions and delusions in the society, bodily concept of life, materialistic civilization. It was a war. And internally there was a war with your mind. That's Kirtanam for him. And of course, chanting of holy names. If with that spirit we chant holy names, then for him that was Krishna Nam. Otherwise it was not. So he fought against Sahajism, he crushed Sahajism, he destroyed Sahajism at its very root, and Sahajas were very afraid of him. They didn't want even to face him, and they used to change the course of their of the way they were walking. If they used to see Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur coming from the direction, they used to change their way. They were so afraid of him. That's why he was called as the Lion Guru, Simha Guru, Acharya Kesari. What else he destroyed? He destroyed Mayavad. Mayavad is a philosophy which says you are that, Tattvam Asi, you are God. I am you. That's Mayavad. The spiritual aspirant, he says to God, I am you. Well, God says, what's happening? But anyway, they don't want to listen to God because for them God is Nirakar, is a light. So that kind of useless philosophy, Mayavad, I am God, and Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur took every pain to destroy Mayavad. He published many books of Madhvacharya in his press at Bagh Bazar, from where he printed books of Madhvacharya, like for example Mayavad Khandanam. He published books of Vyasa Tirtha, Tatparya Chandrika. He also published other books of Sri Sampradaya of Ramanujacharya, like for example Sharanagati Gadyam, and also Yamunacharya's books, and Kulashekar's Mukudmala Stotra. He published all these things because he said, well, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement came to give the sweetness of God, but before that you have to destroy this jungle of Mayavad. But that previous acharyas have done already. So why do repeat the same thing over and over again? So he said, well, we will publish the books of previous acharyas. Let people understand. Mayavad is long back, it is already destroyed. It's gone. People have defeated Mayavad. But simply because the propaganda is not like that, people don't know. So he took all endeavors to destroy Mayavad. He traveled to South India to collect these books. At that time there was no internet, there was no libraries. So he went to South India, he collected the books of Madhvacharya, Ramanacharya. Many of the books were also available in Calcutta Library. Still, if you go to Calcutta Library, which is one of the biggest libraries in Asia, they already have some manuscripts. But he went to the source and got those books, talked to those Swamijis, came back, published those books, and spoke against Mayavad in his articles and his lectures. So he took all pains to destroy Mayavad. He also destroyed casteism. Brahmanas, at that time Brahmanas took pride in their position and they said, we are Brahmanas, God is our monopoly, Shudras, and Vaishyas, they should be under us, they are good for nothing, this blah blah blah. So they had a meeting in Balighai. Balighai is a place in Bengal, and there he went and he delivered a beautiful lecture and destroyed Brahmanism. And still the record of that lecture is still available in a book form, which is called as Brahmana O Vaishnava. And it's a beautiful book where in the debate there were all Brahmanas and there were Vaishnavas, and when he spoke, he first glorified Brahmanas from scriptures that their position is unique. But then but then he took a turn in his lecture and he said, well, the Brahmanas who are not devotees of Vishnu, they are lower than dog eaters. And he proved that. And he said, Vaishnavas, we should be Vaishnav. Brahmanas are lower than Vaishnavas. First step is Brahmana, who knows God. Next step is Vaishnava, who not only knows but serves him. But a Brahmana who is not a Vaishnava, he is lower than a Chandal. He proved it. And people were really impressed. And people really applauded him. And that's how he destroyed Brahmanism once and for all. And those Brahmanas became so envious, they wanted to murder him, they wanted to kill him. But of course, he was an emissary of God, ambassador of God, so nobody could do anything. And last but not the least, he was very interested, very enthusiastic to destroy materialistic civilization. The West. When one of his, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur sent few of his disciples to the West to propagate Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. This is before A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada went to the West. And so one of the devotees who went to Germany was actually Bon Maharaj. And when he returned to India, our Swami Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he and Bhakti Vikasa Swami Goswami, they went to Harbour port, it's a ship port. They went there and to receive him. And as he came down, they were there, and Bon Maharaj told them, it's so difficult to preach in the West. It's almost impossible. So Prabhupada and Bhakti Maharaj, they asked him, well, what kind of questions they were asking? So Bon Maharaj said, well, they were difficult questions. So they told, no, you should tell. So they were having a very informal discussion. Bon Maharaj said, well, they were asking this question, Srila Prabhupada answered it, then another question Prabhupada answered, defeated it, another question Prabhupada defeated it, and so on and so on. And then Bhakti Vikasa Maharaj said that the East has conquered the West. That was how it went. And they were disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta. You should always remember that. They were themselves, Srila Prabhupada themselves, a unique Acharya, stalwart. And whose disciple? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. You can imagine how much knowledgeable Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur would have been. So it was not just knowledge, it was knowledge with intense purity. Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur often said, even a dog of Gaudiya Math can defeat scholars. That's that much how confident he was. That much clarity was there in his message, and that much depth was there in his philosophical concepts. That much grasp he had of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. So he often went to Vraj Mandal Parikrama, and he said, after the Parikrama, he said, all these, Vrindavan is full of neophytes. I have hardly seen anybody read Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami or read philosophy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He always emphasized on this point. Don't imitate Vaishnavas. Try to understand the spirit of the message, and then your life will be successful. He always emphasized this point. He always emphasized in in short words, on following the message, and not just dressing up like Vaishnavas, or maybe having proud that we are connected to Lord, so we are connected to Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. He was not interested in all these things. He was not interested in these superficial things. He often said to his disciples, especially householders, he was telling, you are cheating me. You are connected to the highest philosophy, and you again want to go back to your blind well. And many times he blessed his householder disciples that let your house be burned and destroyed, and your family be destroyed, so that whatever is holding you back in this material world, let it go away, so that you can go back to Krishna within this life and serve him fully 24 hours. That's all revolutionary words. Who will be able to digest this? No one. But yet he spoke, and yet many people got connected to him because of his purity and because of his strong message, his determination, and also his concern for the fallen living beings. That's the point there. People could sense that. People could sense the concern and the urgency in this message. And they joined him. They joined. He was himself called as the Lion Guru, and he produced many other lions. And they preached all over the world. That's what he did. So he destroyed. That's what I was talking about. He was interested in destroying, and that's why this glorification, Apasiddhanta Dhvanta Harine, he is clearly his whole personality is captured in these words. Whole personality. He was a saint, so he was simply interested in destroying. What about relishing the sweetness of Vrindavan? So somebody asked this, okay, so what about the sweetness of relishing the Vrindavan pastimes? Was his heart dry? No. Outside he was strong, ferocious like a lion, and inside he was soft as a rose. That's what he is. Outside he crushed and destroyed misconceptions and delusions, and inside he tasted the sweetness of Vrindavan. So Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj was one of the intimate disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. He wrote a poem on him, glorifying him, which is often sung in all Gaudiya Maths. And there he describes Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur as having taken 2 steps. By first step, he crushed wrong misconceptions and destroyed the jungle of Mayavad. And with the next step, he established Raganuga Bhakti, the sweetness of Vraj and Vrindavan. That was Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. But his sweetness was not visible. That's the idea. Was Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur sweet? Well, if you see his pictures, he's very grave. He looks very grave and he looks very serious. Did anybody see him dancing and singing? Well, if you say Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur dancing and singing, that is inconceivable. That is achintya. Nobody ever saw him dancing and singing. But anybody who saw him, he started dancing and singing. That's a Mahabhagavat. He never danced and sang, and that was on a purpose, because he wanted to show that we are not Sahijya movement. We are a serious movement. Don't take us lightly. That's what he wanted to project to people. We are different. Although we are Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's servants, we are different. He wanted to show that. So he carried this seriousness with him. So was he sweet? Yes, he was sweet within, and his sweetness was detected within. That was the idea in Gaudiya Math. Those who knew him, those who could see within him, they could see his sweetness. But those who didn't know him, they thought he's a saint who is always criticizing, he's rash, he's not speaking about the mellows of Vrindavan. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur went to Radhakund and he spoke about Upanishads, dry philosophy. All Vrajvasis were saying he is a nonsense saint, and they were like criticizing heavily. His disciples went to Gaya, and Gaya, all the people in Gaya, they became anti to Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur's disciples, because they were like simply criticizing materialistic thoughts, conceptions, and actually cutting them down. Nobody was helping them. In Dhaka, his disciples went to give a lecture, and when they gave a lecture, the disciples started speaking against all the wrong philosophies prevalent at that time in Dhaka, and people started throwing stones at them. And all these news went to him, and he said, "I am very happy. If people insult you, if people try to beat you, then that means you are speaking truth. Because this word doesn't welcome truth. This word likes flattery." So he said, that's a success of a mission. And he did that. He never shied off speaking truth. He spoke truth to big politicians, to lawyers, to one of the big scholar person who visited his mutt at that time. He asked him, if you want answers to your questions, go and wash vessels in the kitchen. He didn't shy off. So he didn't bow down to anybody. He just bowed down to Krishna and his devotees. And he said it will be very beneficial for every conditioned soul to bow down in front of Krishna and his devotees. He wrote many. He actually didn't write much, because his whole interest was to propagate the books of Bhaktivedanta Thakur, his guru. And he published Bhaktivedanta Thakur's books, widely spread it. He himself wrote some few commentaries on Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Bhagavatam he wrote some notes there. But most often he was just speaking, and his lectures are recorded, which are now in form of books, which Gaudiya Math is publishing. So he's still there with us in form of his books. His legacy is still there in the form of his words. And if we can follow his instructions, Srila Prabhupada said to his disciples, if my Guru Maharaj would have been there now, then you all would not have been there. Because Prabhupada said, I am 70% lenient, 75% lenient than my Guru. But that was Bhaktisiddhanta. He was in a sense lenient and soft within his heart. He had concern for living conditioned souls, and that's why he was speaking in such a strong message. When he was departing, 1936, December 31st, he spoke his final words, and he said, all those people whom I have offended by my strong words, may they forgive me, for later in their life they will realize that I was trying to benefit them. He said that. He was humble, but when it came to spreading the message of Lord Chaitanya, he was not humble. I mean, he always told his disciple, Dasu Asmi. Anybody who used to come to meet him, he used to say, Dasu Asmi, I am a servant. Anybody who used to bow down to him, even his own disciples, used to bow back again as a matter of reciprocation with them. That's how humble he was. But when it came to instructions, he said, well, I am a guru. You should accept what I am saying. And when it came to preaching, he said, this is truth, and nothing else is truth. So he clearly acted as a saint, as Srila Prabhupada said, like a lion outside and like a lamb within. That's how he was. So we can. He was also very humble, and his humility was expressed in form of hiding his emotions. He never showed his emotions in the public. He never sang in beautiful ragas and tunes so that people think he's a great devotee. He never did that. He spoke philosophy, and on the contrary, when he was speaking philosophy in strong words, people used to criticize him. And he said, that's good. I'm safe. That people don't flatter me, they don't praise me, otherwise I'll get false pride. His conceptions were very clear, and he was humble enough to hide his ecstasy. But many of his disciples noted, in spite of his hiding the ecstasy used to come forth in some incident, in some time, and like a volcano. And the devotees noted his face used to become red, and he used to get horripilations. Sometimes he used to become unconscious. Many times with his internal group, when they were reading 𝗲𝗪𝗀 and other books, he used to weep like a baby. He used to wail like a baby, only in his internal group. That time he couldn't hide his emotions. He was such a dear devotee of Srimati Radharani. His disciples revealed his Swarupa, and he was Nayan Manjari. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur himself accepted that by his silence. But he was so dear to Radharani and so partial to Radharani that whenever he used to hear the word Radha, he used to have a physical impact on his body. His heart used to go, he used to get a shock. That's what he was. Sometimes he used to become unconscious while just speaking the name of Radha. So please, it's my request to read his teachings. Bhakti Vikasa Maharaj, he has written a book. It's right here. It's there, you can see. This is Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav. It is there, this book is there, Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, written by Bhakti Vikasa Maharaj. And you can all read it. Maharaj, he spent at least 20 years researching in the life of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. There is his life and his teachings and his Saraswati Digvijay, that's what Saraswati Vijay, that's what we call, how he traveled all over India, defeated his opponents, established Gaudiya conception all around India, and established many mats, 64 Gaudiya mats, and then his teachings, which are translated into English, that's also there in volume 3. So you can all read it. And there's nothing, by the way. You might think it's a big book, but it's a drop in an ocean. So if you know Bengali, that's the best thing you can read. Gaudiyas, there's so many Gaudiya editions available. You can read them first hand, but there's a footnotes. You have to know your Bengali well. And by the way, not just Bengali, you have to have some devotion, because even Bengalis can't understand his Bengali, that's the point. But still you can read them, that's nice. So anyway, we are so fortunate that Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, he came on this earth planet, he preached, and he still lives. He has not. He still lives with us. He has not left. He still lives with us in his words and in his followers, people who follow him. He lives with them. So please try to follow his instructions, make your life perfect. Srila Prabhupada's instructions and his instructions might seem little contradictory in the beginning, because his instructions are very strict, straightforward. Prabhupada didn't actually speak so strongly to his disciples in the West, although disciples felt that Prabhupada is very strong in his message. But if they would, that's why he said, if my Guru was there, then he would not have been there. But Prabhupada repeated as it is what his Guru said. Prabhupada said, I am repeating as it is what my Guru told me. As it is, in simple words though. And that he did. So if you read Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur's teachings, you will find Prabhupada is saying the same thing. Of course, Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada knew what to speak when, how to encourage people, that he was expert in that. But he was repeating the same thing. So it's good to read Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur's work so that you can understand who was Prabhupada. Naturally, when we when we glorify Prabhupada, naturally the question is, who is his guru? And when you know Srila Prabhupada, you will want to know Bhaktisiddhanta. When you know Bhaktisiddhanta, then you will understand what contribution Prabhupada did to this world. Hare Krishna. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.